All right, welcome to the program, Charles Moscowitz, Monday through Friday, either 12 or 2 p.m. live at YouTube and at subscribing platforms. David Zere is my guest. David, you are a radio host at Real America's Voice. Thanks for joining me, David.
Thank you so much for having me, Charles.
You know, David, before we get into the obvious issue of the day, the only issue that's worth discussing, I just want to ask you a little bit about your radio station and where you can be heard and how your show is going and how that works.
Sure. Well, we are a TV format and also OTT other than TV. We're Real America's Voice News. We're headquartered out of Denver. We've got studios in Washington, D.C., all over the country, Palm Beach. We're on channel 219 on Dish Network, and we are channel 240 on Pluto.tv. And we're also in Comcast in the Chicago area. And it's very exciting. It's a burgeoning network. We have John Solomon just joined us from Just the News, who's like journalist out there. We direct and air The War Room with Steve Bannon, Raheem Kassam. He also has a new show, Raheem, The National Pulse. We have Eric Greitens, former Navy SEAL, Missouri governor. So we have an exceptional lineup, and I work for Dr. Gina Loudon, who's just a powerhouse.
Excellent. All right, listen, you guys you've got your thumb on the latest news over there, and you know what's going on. So obviously, I want to ask you about the big steal, as it were. What is the latest? I mean, I'm sure you've heard the interview with Sidney Powell, who was representing the president as part of the legal team, where she talked with several people, including OAN and I think Lou Dobbs over at Fox News, and said that they're going to be releasing the Kraken. I don't know if you've heard this.
Yeah, well, I have. I think there's two ways that this election was interfered with. The first is three items, which is big tech, driving algorithms away from conservative sites. And we think up to 16 million votes may have been affected by this. They admitted it on tape with Project Veritas on video last year with James O'Keefe. Google execs admitted they were trying to foil the Trump reelection and then take 94% negative press against Trump for 4 years straight. 4 years of fake investigations, and then take suppression polls. They tell people he's down 17 points in Wisconsin the day before the election, and how many people stayed home and didn't vote for Trump because of that. It could have been significant. So the big lie is also a steal. And then you have the fraud, right? You have potential urban fraud, late night ballots. Nobody can account. Your vote may have gone through Barcelona before it was counted. There may be people from Cuba and Venezuela and China involved with the software and the manufacturing of these machines. And we need answers. And I think Sidney Powell wouldn't be saying as such if she didn't have some proof.
No, she has even said that she doesn't say these things unless she can back it up. And I do think it's coming. I don't know if it's going to be enough, but I hate to think that the American people are so stupid that they would believe all the propaganda coming out all these years about Trump and the anti-Trump drumbeat. And yet, if it is proven that there was systemic voter fraud, which I suspect there was, then that shows that the American people did not buy these lies. That in fact, President Trump won a landslide. And that I think that at the end of the day, he probably increased his vote across the board in all 50 states, including my own state of Massachusetts. He did better this time than last time. I wouldn't be at all surprised if we get to the bottom of this fraud, and particularly the business with Dominion software, and have those votes exposed and thrown out. You could actually see not only President Trump take all of the states that are presently in contention, but even a couple of other states like New Hampshire and Minnesota, which I think Trump also may have won. And you would see a genuine landslide. It would also, I think, affect Congress in that the Republicans might even close the gap on the House and take the House even, or at least move within like 2 or 3 votes. And the Senate, I think they're going to take the 2 senators from Georgia and maybe some others as well. Now that might be a rosy sounding prediction. Maybe I'm talking happy talk, and I know that we're operating on a string here. But yeah, there's so much at stake. I mean, are we going to have an election now that is basically controlled by high tech, where they can manipulate votes and they can censor opinion? I mean, that's what this is about.
Well, I think one legacy that Trump will leave behind, even if he does concede at some point, that he's going to expose election fraud and the fraud that's been, placed on the American people. I think most people are uninformed. I think most people are staying home and getting a check. I think about a third of the United States, especially here on Long Island, a third of the workforce works for the government in some capacity, or the nurses or teachers, and they just stay home. Okay, stay home. Everybody stay home. But the third of us who own businesses, who are getting our butts handed to us every day, carrying the burden of the corona on us, blowing through our life savings, are the ones who get it. And we don't have representation from either side on this issue. It's only Trump, and it's only a handful of others. So it's a very, very serious and terrible situation. But I think the legacy that he would leave behind, whether he is victorious or not, is to that there's games here, and maybe it'll revert back to manual voting. This is really terrible what's going on here. And I don't think Trump would have went on TV and said there was fraud unless they knew there was mass fraud. And we all saw what happened. And I travel with the White House press pool with the Real America's Voice News, and I've been to about 17 rallies with them in the ground in Mississippi, Pennsylvania, Ohio, New Hampshire. 4 times I've been up there. And everybody's a Trump supporter. Even the Democrats in all of these cities, they're all Trump supporters. The Blue Dog Democrats, the welders, the ironsmiths, the car workers, the frackers, the coal miners. They were all voting for Trump. There was one Biden sign that I saw in any one of these states.
No, I mean, I've been to New Hampshire too, and it's the same. It's a phenomenal movement. It's unlike anything I've seen, and I'm older than you. I remember back in the day that this. I've never seen a more organic, more dynamic, more courageous movement where you come out and they throw garbage at you. You're called deplorable. I think that Trump expanded his base in every demographic except one, which apparently was white males. I mean, he picked up black votes, he picked up Hispanic votes, he even picked up my fellow Jewish votes. In Brooklyn, you had Jews for Trump. Yeah. They're out there with the flags, people throwing garbage at them and yelling anti-Semitic slurs. They didn't care. They're out there.
We're tired of being told we're good, we're bad for being good people. We're tired of it. And when you go to the Trump rally, like the MAGA rally in DC this weekend, I was there. There was easily 500,000 people there on the ground. And, we cleaned up the garbage after ourselves. Even at the Tea Party back in 2009, we cleaned up the garbage after ourselves. You could eat off the floor. And the Antifa and the BLM people at the rallies were despicable and horrible and beating people up and aggravating and assaulting and harassing kids, shooting fireworks at people eating dinner, punching white old men in the face and knocking them unconscious. It's, we're not the bad guys, and we're the ones who go to work every day, and people sacrifice a lot to come to these rallies and everything because they're the ones who are working, right?
That's right.
And,
they actually work for a living. They're not like a lot of these left-wingers who are either paid to go to the rallies or they're like, government hacks. If Trump had won outright, of course, we would have seen their rallies, which would have been more looting of black businesses, burning of black neighborhoods, and killing black people, which is sort of their MO, what they sort of do. So,
well, it's really despicable that our cities have been destroyed, and Washington, D.C., and I'm from New York City area. These cities are ghost towns. 90% of restaurants in New York can't pay their October, November rent. And they're putting, Le Bernardin, the best restaurant in the world, closed down. The Parisian, one of the oldest restaurants in the United States, closed down. Ellen's Stardust Diner, a mainstay on Broadway, gone. Rodney Dangerfield's Comedy Club. The comedy industry, the theater industry, the movie industry, the bowling industry, the dance studios, the karate studios, the gyms, they're all getting crushed. And, in blue states, the unemployment is 11 to 13%, and they have twice the death rates per capita as the red states. And the red states' unemployment are 5 to 7%, and they have half to a third of the death rates of the blue states. The blue states are doing this politically. They probably took a 20% chunk out of the economy with their excessive lockdowns, and they're killing a lot more people than they're helping.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we all believe that we can take reasonable measures to protect ourselves from a virus. So you wash your hands, you put on a mask maybe when you go inside a location, fine. But we don't, the idea of this massive lockdown where you have governors acting like little dictators marching in with mandates, including here in Massachusetts, we have this phony Republican governor, simply declaring there's going to be a curfew. There's no constitutional authority to do that. Fortunately, local state courts are throwing this stuff out. But in the meantime, they are destroying the economy, which is all the more reason why I do think that people in New York and Massachusetts and California, I think they did come out for Trump. I think that there is, this is just a sense, and it's a sense, as you say, David, from having gone to these rallies, that there is a huge movement in this country for Trump to get rid of this phony, draconian,
Yeah.
agenda.
Well, yeah. I just wanted to address two different states, right? So Pennsylvania, he supposedly lost Trump, but like Ohio, is the same exact demographic.
Right.
It's 100 miles from Pittsburgh, and it's the same blue collar working class state that he won by 7.5% there, but he loses in the Allegheny County area, Moon Township, Latrobe. There's no way. And then in New Hampshire, he was only behind. He only lost by 2,600 votes in the last election.
And they were the people who drove in from Massachusetts to vote too.
Yeah, and in 2016, he only lost by 2,000 votes. And I really had my ear to the ground up there. It doesn't make any sense. No. I never met a diner owner or a barber or anybody up there that was supporting Joe Biden. How did this happen?
Not to mention that all the left-wing college kids from Dartmouth were home because of the pandemic.
That's true. I was at the bar during the primaries in New Hampshire, and there was Bernie supporters at the bar, and they were like ranking on me, for being in the Trump corner. And, but at the end of the night, they offered to pay for my beers, but it was the kid's father's credit card that he was using to pay for it. But I'm the capitalist pig, right?
Oh, no, that's typical. Yeah, those are the guys that did the whole Occupy Wall Street thing. But here we are. You're talking about Pennsylvania. This reminds me of this fact, and it has not been explained, how it could have happened that at around 11:30 the night of the election, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, and Georgia stopped counting. They shut down their polls. And then in the wee hours of the morning, something like 4:00 in the morning, all of a sudden, while everyone went to sleep thinking Trump had won, and in Pennsylvania, by the way, he was over 500,000 votes ahead.
Yeah,
all of
700.
a sudden, you wake up and you find out that Biden had picked up several of these states. Now, this, if Trump isn't on this, if they haven't, I think that from what I understand, they've got sworn affidavits, and a sworn affidavit is evidence. That's, you swear an affidavit under pain of perjury that people witnessed these vans coming into the dock in Detroit, and probably, I think also in Philadelphia, and delivering hundreds of thousands of votes, which had just Biden's name on them. And that in one case, they re-registered and re-registered. Now you've got that allegation, plus you got the allegation with Dominion Software, which was, as you say, it was started in Venezuela to help Hugo Chavez come to power. And then it was used in other elections around the world. It's in over 30 states in the United States. And it's been acknowledged by the head of that group, this guy Eric Coomer, who is to the left of Antifa. He's a way left-wing guy, who has said that these systems are live. In other words, they can be monitored by people. You could watch them, and if the vote ain't going your way, you can start to manipulate things online. It seems like an obvious case of fraud, and I just hope that there's some way to get to the bottom of this. Otherwise, we're not going to have free elections in this country, and the elections are one of the only things we have left.
We've become a banana republic, that's for sure. And nothing's for certain anymore. And I was in the Soviet Union in 1986 when it was still communist. And we're not far off from that. We've got tyrannical dictators who are communist/fascist in these blue states in Oregon and Pennsylvania and Washington, in California, New Jersey, New York. They're disgusting. And it's really upsetting. But I was with the War Room staff up until like 3 a.m. the night of the election. I was broadcasting from Washington right next door to them. And I was with Steve Bannon and Raheem Kassam. And they had Richard Barrister on, the pollster. And they went over county by county at like 3 a.m. in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. And there was nowhere for Biden to get these votes. We left that place that night saying that Trump is going to win this election. Now, I left earlier than Steve Bannon and the crew, about an hour, but I went back to the hotel and I only got an hour of sleep. I'm telling you that in that 1 hour, Wisconsin flipped. And he was way ahead, Trump. In 1 hour, how did they count those 138,000 ballots that came in the middle of the night so quick? And how come only 3,000 of them were for Trump and that Biden won 99.5% of them or whatever it was? I mean, there's definitely funny business. We all know it. It's going to get ugly. I think it's going to get very ugly before this is cured, because we're not going to accept that this was a legitimate win until it's proven and shown and everybody can account for their vote. And we know when we were blocked out of those voting halls, those counting offices in Philly, that they were probably marking ballots, and those are very hard to trace once they're done. I don't understand why didn't we get arrested trying to get in there? Because Trump won like 42 out of 48 sheriffs in Pennsylvania, they're elected officials, but not in Philly. So those sheriffs didn't enforce the court order. And, you know, that system should have been taken down immediately because of that. Why didn't Trump's team have 1 million people on the ground ready for this? And that's kind of what bothers me a little bit.
Yeah.
We get caught flat-footed here. Why didn't we have hundreds of people in Michigan, in Wisconsin, in Pennsylvania, ready to storm the gates and fight their way in if they had to?
I agree. I mean, I don't know where the Trump people were. There's plenty of warning. I mean, this is so predictable. It's like predicting the time, that this is going to happen, especially in those states and in those cities. I mean, you had it back in 2012 when Obama picked up like 99% of the vote in certain precincts. I think there was some where he got 110%. I mean, and the same thing has happened now. You've got certain, Trump, I mean, a perfect piece of evidence on this is that Trump did better in every urban city in the United States, including New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago. The only cities where he didn't do better were Milwaukee, Detroit, Philadelphia, and Atlanta.
But then then take into account the down balloting. People voted for a Republican congressman, but not Trump. There's no way that happened.
That's right.
There's no way that happened. And we know, the Trump legal team's got it together now, and hopefully they can, get some traction here. But they've got 98% of the media against him because now Fox has joined the choir against Trump. And there's only outlets like us and a few others out there and shows like yours. We're a handful, but we're gaining a lot of traction. People are flocking to us. I think Trump lost a quarter of its audience.
No, I think you're right. And I think that,
Fox.
Yeah, I know. Fox did. And I think that, they like the Boston Globe and all the establishment papers, they are just proceeding as if Biden is elected. And they're talking about, well, he's going to do this and he's going to do that. I mean, it's the biggest piece of propaganda I've ever seen in my life. I mean, any reasonable person knows that there has not been anyone certified yet as the president-elect. We basically have a situation right now that's analogous to the two popes. There is no declared winner yet. If they dribble the ball and it goes up to December, then Trump will win, because if it goes to the U.S. House of Representatives,
yeah, sure,
each state sends up one delegate selected by the legislatures, and there are 31 legislatures controlled by Republicans. So it's interesting. I mean, it's going to be an interesting thing to watch. I think that if they step forward, and if Sidney Powell steps out and Giuliani, and they show their cards in terms of what they have here, they show that they've got 500 affidavits. We get to read the stories of people who witnessed this fraud. Then I think the American public is going to turn, because I think most people, including most people who very well may have voted for Biden, nobody wants to see an election stolen. Nobody wants to see cheating like this.
Well, I'm not so sure about that. I mean,
I know what you mean.
Our side wants it legitimately. I think 95% of our side are really great people and really want the right thing to be done. I think only about 50% of the Democrats are real ethical people. I can't take it anymore. I mean, look at the stuff they're spewing. Look what Ilhan Omar is saying. She's saying the rally in Washington the other day was a Klan rally. I mean, she's despicable. This is despicable. This
The
is so
fact they could get
outrageous.
away with that, and they would be backed. I mean, first of all, I mean, they talk about the Proud Boys. There were more men of color in the Proud Boys than there is in BLM.
Well, the Proud Boys were really well behaved. Sometimes they get a little rowdy, but overall they're awesome. And they were there, and they were taking it on the chin from BLM activists. There was this one black girl who was yelling, "You're effing racist, you're effing pigs, you're racist, racist, racist," and they were very reserved, and they didn't engage her, and they just stood there and took it. And but when the lights went down in Washington D.C., the Proud Boys let them have it. And it was a proud moment because they were fighting back, and they didn't let them get away because, they were assaulting innocent people. And the Proud Boys were there to make sure that more people didn't get hurt. And they get a bum rap. And most of the Proud Boys that I saw there were really just awesome and well done.
And the entire thing, it was certainly a million MAGA people march. I mean, I think that you had families come out with children. It was an amazing thing, and it was not covered by the mainstream press. It was ignored. I mean, they turned their back on it in a way similar to the way they turned their back on pro-life rallies. But this one is even
so. This isn't just about the election for them. These people have been suffering. They've been funding this lockdown. They're the small business owners. Their kids have been home. Their social lives have been destroyed. Their athletic dreams in high school have been cut short. They're not getting scouted. They're not getting scholarships. Yeah. They're not going away to school. They're not getting the college experience. I mean, we're raising a generation of mentally anguished children at this point. And, suicides are up on maybe 75,000 people this year. Opioid use is up 40+%. Suicide hotline calls are up 65% in certain areas. This is really terrible what's going on. And women aren't getting breast cancer testing and treatment. Men and women aren't getting heart attack treatment, stroke treatment, diabetes treatment. They're not going to the doctor. Right. And I don't know if you've been to the medical system recently, but we're kind of like Canada now. It takes months to get an appointment. The rules are crazy. And meanwhile, our hospitalization rate from COVID is still only at like 6-7%. We're being lied to that there's a crisis around the country. I know a few hospitals in a few states are overwhelmed, but most of them are not. And in New York City, we still only have a 3 to 4% hospitalization rate for COVID. We're being fed a giant bowl of lies, and nobody's fighting it. Nobody's fighting it. I'm on Long Island here, and I'm running a rally. I'm emceeing a rally next Saturday to reopen New York with guys like Jonathan Gillum, former Navy SEAL, and these other people. And we're shouting from the rooftops, but we should have 500,000 people there, not 4,000 or 6,000 like will probably show up. I just don't understand why everybody's a zombie and just going along with everything.
It's scary. And I've seen this certainly in my own family and people I know who are just, they think I'm crazy by even talking about this. But with regard to the COVID, I mean, you can take a look do a simple Google search. Even the New York Times acknowledges that hospitals get a lot of extra money if they call a death a COVID death, even if the person died of another cause like heart disease or cancer. If they had even a drop of COVID in their system, it's called a COVID death. And thus the numbers are inflated.
So today in the Gateway Pundit, the CDC, they're reporting that the CDC lists 27,000 people died from heart attacks and it was listed as COVID, and that there were 8,000 accidents and poisonings that were listed as COVID deaths. So we know there's been exaggerations.
They're keeping up the fear and the hysteria, and maybe they're continuing it now because the election isn't decided. I don't know.
Well, listen,
we all joked about how the election would be over the minute once it was over.
I think Pfizer should be investigated for criminally negligent homicide by waiting to release their vaccine. How many weeks could it have been ahead in the process if they really did what they were supposed to? And they were just punishing Trump for his advocacy to lower prescription drug prices. And we know Pfizer were big Democrat fundraising donors, to the Dems. So there's funny business going on there, and it's criminal. And I do believe in conspiracies now. I wasn't always a conspiracy guy, and I think all these people that were called lunatics and crazy and all that, I think they deserve credit for being, skeptical. Because now look what's going on. And there's no doubt that there's complicity between the media, the government, former CIA officials, intelligence apparatchik, James Brenner, Jim Clapper, Norma Eisen, the former ethics chief under Obama, who's leading the color revolution to create this, conflict and contesting the elections. And, this thing was a perfect cocktail of bail reform, of George Floyd, and the COVID. And the Democrats ran with it, and they destroyed Donald Trump's election. And it was all by design. And if anybody thinks differently, they're naive.
I agree. Well, it's not destroyed yet, and we'll see. I mean, it's, they have to do something very soon because the window closes a little every day. But, we shall see. I mean, I'm not throwing in the towel yet. I mean, we'll just, I'm waiting for the big Kraken.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, Sidney Powell's been super, and she's on point. And again, if anything, even if Trump, they gave Al Gore 39 days to contest the election in 2000. Right. And we're a week and a half away, and the world's falling, the sky's falling, right? And all the media is acting like that Biden should be transitioning already.
It ain't over, as they say. So, David, where can people hear your excellent show, and when are you on?
So my show, Breaking Point, is on Real America's Voice News on Saturdays at noon. It's channel 219 on Dish Network, or channel 240 on Pluto.tv, or it streams live at americasvoice.news. Check out the network. We partnered up with Just the News and John Solomon, award-winning journalist.
Oh, he's great.
We have a super lineup: Raheem Kassam, Steve Bannon, Eric Greitens, Frank Gaffney, former Assistant Secretary of Defense under Reagan, and Dr. Gina Loudon and Miranda Kahn during the day. And Carrie Sheffield's our White House correspondent. She's amazing. So we're very, very excited, and we're going to be the new format for people to watch.
And it's going to be huge because it's picking up as Fox and the rest of these guys go in the tank.
100%.
Anyways, David Zere, I want to thank you for joining me today. Great talk.
Super, Charlie. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks a lot. Talk to you soon.